The wedding invitation sat on Lily Jenkins's desk for 3 weeks before she finally decided she was going to go. And when she picked it up again that Thursday morning, her best friend's looped handwriting blurred as tears threatened to spill over because attending meant facing both men who had completely turned her world upside down. She pressed her fingers against her eyes and took a deep breath. The wedding was in 2 days, and she still had not chosen between Quinton Fuller and Marcus Hayes. They were both good men, both wanted her, both made her feel things she had never felt before. But they were so different that choosing felt like deciding between two entirely separate futures. Quinton was her childhood friend, the boy next door who had grown into a man she barely recognized anymore. He worked as a marine biologist, traveling the world to study ocean conservation, and every time he came home to their small coastal town in Maine, he looked at her like she was the only person who mattered. They had history, shared memories of building sandcastles and stealing cookies from her mother's kitchen. He knew her in ways no one else did. Marcus was new, exciting, dangerous in the way that made her heart race. She had met him 6 months ago at a charity gala in Boston that her marketing firm had organized. He was sophisticated, confident, and he pursued her with an intensity that left her breathless. He sent flowers to her office, took her to restaurants she could never afford, and made her feel like a princess in a fairy tale. The problem was that she had feelings for both of them, and time was running out. Lily's phone buzzed with a text from Quinton. "Coffee before you head into work." "I'm at Morrison's." Morrison's was their spot, the little cafe on the corner where they had spent countless mornings over the years. She grabbed her jacket and headed out, her stomach twisting with anxiety. She had been avoiding being alone with either of them lately because every conversation felt like it was leading toward a decision she was not ready to make. Quinton was sitting at their usual table by the window when she walked in, his dark hair slightly messy from the ocean wind. He had just returned from a research trip to the Galapagos Islands, and his skin was tanned from weeks under the equatorial sun. When he saw her, his face lit up with that familiar smile that had been making her feel warm inside since she was 7 years old. "Hey, Lil." He stood and pulled her into a hug that lasted a fraction too long to be purely friendly. She breathed in the scent of salt water and cedar, the smell that always clung to him. "Hey, yourself." She sat down across from him, and he pushed a vanilla latte toward her. He had already ordered her usual. "So the wedding," he said, getting straight to the point. That was Quinton, never one to dance around the important stuff. "Are you bringing anyone?" She took a sip of her coffee to buy herself time. "I'm still figuring that out." His blue eyes searched her face. "You're still seeing him?" It was not a question, but she answered anyway. "Yes." Quinton leaned back in his chair, his jaw tight. "Lily, I need to know where we stand. I've been patient, I've given you space, but I've loved you since we were kids, and I can't keep pretending that I'm okay with you dating someone else." Her heart clenched. "Quinn, you never said anything. For years, you never said a single word about how you felt." "I was scared," he admitted, his voice rough. "I was scared that if I told you and you didn't feel the same way, I'd lose you completely. But I'm more scared of losing you to someone who doesn't know you the way I do." Before she could respond, her phone rang. "Marcus." She looked at the screen, then at Quinton's face, and felt torn in two. "Answer it," Quinton said quietly. "I'll wait." She stepped outside, the cool morning air biting at her cheeks. "Hi, Marcus. Good morning, beautiful." His voice was smooth, confident. "I have a surprise for you. Can you meet me for lunch? I'll send a car to pick you up from your office at noon." "Marcus, I'm working on a big campaign. I can't just leave in the middle of the day." "Please," he said, and there was something in his tone that made her pause. "It's important. I promise it'll be worth it," she sighed. "Okay, noon." When she went back inside, Quinton was staring out the window, his coffee untouched. She sat down, and he looked at her with an expression that made her chest ache. "I should go," she said softly. "I have to get to work." He nodded but reached across the table to catch her hand. "Just think about what I said, okay? Think about who really knows you, Lily. Who's been there through everything." She squeezed his hand and then pulled away, feeling like she was abandoning something precious. Work was a blur of emails and client calls, and at noon exactly, her assistant informed her that a black town car was waiting outside. Marcus did not do anything halfway. She grabbed her purse and headed downstairs, sliding into the leather interior as the driver pulled smoothly into traffic. They drove to the harbor, where a sleek yacht was docked. Marcus was waiting on the deck, looking like he had stepped out of a magazine in his tailored charcoal suit. He helped her aboard, his hand warm and steady on her lower back. "What's all this?" she asked as he led her to a table set with crystal glasses and fine china. "I wanted to talk to you somewhere private," he said, pouring her a glass of champagne. "Somewhere special." They sat down, and servers appeared with plates of food that looked too beautiful to eat. Marcus watched her with those intense dark eyes that always made her feel like she was the center of the universe. "Lily, I know things have been complicated," he began. "I know you have history with Quinton, but I also know that what we have is real. From the moment I met you, I knew you were different. You're smart, talented, and you see the world in a way that inspires me." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Her breath caught in her throat. "I'm not asking you to marry me," he said quickly, seeing her expression. "Not yet, but I want you to know that I'm serious about us. This is a promise ring, a promise that I'm all in and that I'll wait for you to be ready." He opened the box to reveal a beautiful sapphire ring surrounded by diamonds. It was stunning and overwhelming, and she felt tears prick her eyes again. "Marcus, I don't know what to say." "Say you'll really give us a chance," he said, taking her hand. "Say you'll stop comparing what we have to what you had with Quinton when you were kids. We're adults now, Lily. Let me show you what our future could look like." She looked at the ring, at his handsome face, at the yacht and the champagne and the life he was offering her. It was everything she had ever dreamed of when she was a little girl reading fairy tales. But something inside her felt unsettled, like she was being asked to make a choice before she fully understood what she was choosing. "Can I think about it?" she asked softly. Disappointment flashed across his face, but he nodded. "Of course, take all the time you need." But they both knew time was running out. The wedding was in 2 days, and she would have to show up with one of them or neither, and neither felt like giving up, which felt impossible. That evening, she drove to her parents' house for dinner. Her mother took one look at her face and pulled her into the kitchen while her father was distracted by the television. "What's wrong, honey?" Jenkins asked, putting the kettle on for tea. Lily told her everything, the words tumbling out in a rush. About Quinton's confession, about Marcus's ring, about feeling like she was being torn in 2 directions at once. Her mother listened without interrupting, the way she always did. When Lily finished, Eleanor was quiet for a long moment. "Let me tell you something about love," her mother finally said. "Real love is not about grand gestures or expensive gifts. It's about showing up. It's about knowing someone's coffee order without asking and remembering their bad days and being there when everything falls apart. It's about building a life together, not just living in the exciting moments." "But I feel things with Marcus that I've never felt before," Lily protested. "He makes me feel special. And Quinton doesn't. Quinton makes me feel safe. But is that enough? Is safety the same as passion?" Her mother smiled sadly. "Safety is not the opposite of passion, sweetheart. Sometimes the steadiest love is the deepest, but only you can decide what you want your life to look like." Lily went home that night more confused than ever. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, trying to imagine her future with each man. With Marcus, she saw penthouses and travel and a life of luxury. With Quinton, she saw the ocean and quiet mornings and coming home to someone who knew all her secrets. The next day was a whirlwind of wedding preparations. Her best friend Claire was getting married, and Lily was a bridesmaid, which meant she spent most of Friday at the venue helping with last-minute details. Claire was radiant with happiness, and watching her with her fiancé made Lily's chest ache with longing. "You look miserable," Claire said as they arranged flowers in the reception hall. "Have you decided yet?" "No," Lily admitted. I keep going back and forth. Every time I think I've made up my mind, something changes. Claire set down the vase she was holding and turned to face Lily directly. Can I be honest with you, please? I've watched you with both of them over the past few months, Claire said carefully, and I've noticed something. When you're with Marcus, you're always trying to be this polished, perfect version of yourself. You choose your words carefully, you dress up, you're performing, but with Quinton, you're just you. You laugh louder, you relax, you're real. That's not fair, Lily protested. Marcus and I are still getting to know each other. Of course I'm more comfortable with Quinn. I've known him my whole life. Exactly, Claire said gently. You've known him your whole life and he's still here, still choosing you. That means something, Lily. But before Lily could respond, her phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Can we talk? It's urgent. She excused herself and called him back. He answered on the first ring. Lily, I need to tell you something, he said, and his voice sounded strained. Something I should have told you from the beginning. Her stomach dropped. What is it? Can you meet me? I'd rather do this in person. They agreed to meet at a restaurant downtown in an hour. Lily's hands were shaking as she drove, imagining all the terrible secrets he might be hiding. Was he married? Did he have children he had never mentioned? Was he some kind of criminal? When she arrived, Marcus was already there, sitting at a corner table looking more serious than she had ever seen him. He stood when she approached, but he did not kiss her cheek like he usually did. Just tell me, she said as soon as she sat down. Whatever it is, just say it. He took a deep breath. I'm not who you think I am. My real name is Marcus Hayes, and I'm the CEO of Hayes Maritime Industries. I'm a billionaire, Lily. I've been hiding it from you because I wanted you to get to know me as just Marcus, not as my bank account. She stared at him, trying to process what he had just said. You're a billionaire? Yes, I own one of the largest shipping companies in the world. I have homes in 5 countries and more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes. He leaned forward, his eyes pleading. But none of that matters to me as much as you do. I hid it because I've been burned before by women who only wanted my money. I wanted to know that what we had was real. Lily felt like the floor had dropped out from under her. You lied to me for 6 months. I never lied, he said quickly. I just didn't tell you everything, and I'm telling you now because I don't want there to be any secrets between us. I love you, Lily. I want to spend my life with you. And I want you to know exactly who I am before you make your decision. She stood up abruptly. I need to think. I need space. Lily, please, but she was already walking away, her mind spinning. A billionaire. Marcus was a billionaire, and he had hidden it from her for half a year. Was that romantic or manipulative? Was he protecting himself or testing her? She did not know anymore. She drove aimlessly for an hour, her thoughts racing, until she found herself at the beach where she and Quinton had spent so much of their childhood. She parked and walked down to the water's edge, letting the sound of the waves calm her racing heart. I thought I might find you here. She turned to see Quinton walking toward her, his hands in his pockets. Of course he knew where to find her, he always did. How did you know I'd be here? She asked. Because this is where you always come when you need to think, he said simply. What happened? She told him about Marcus's revelation, and Quinton listened without interrupting. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. You want to know what I think? He finally asked. Yes. I think you're so caught up in trying to choose the right person that you've forgotten to ask yourself who you actually love. He turned to face her fully, the setting sun casting shadows across his face. Marcus can offer you a life most people only dream about. Money, adventure, excitement, I can't compete with that. I'm just a guy who studies fish and comes home smelling like the ocean, but I can offer you something he can't. What's that? Me, he said simply. All of me. Someone who knows that you hate the smell of coffee, but drink it anyway because you like the ritual of it. Someone who knows that you cry during commercial about rescue dogs, and that you're scared of thunderstorms, and that your favorite place in the world is right here, on this beach. Someone who has loved you since you were 7 years old and will love you until the day I die. Tears were streaming down her face now. Quinn, I'm not rich, Lily, he continued, his voice thick with emotion, but I'm rich in the ways that matter. I'm rich in knowing you. In being part of your history. In wanting to be part of your future, not because you make me feel good about myself, but because you make me want to be better. You make me want to be worthy of you." She threw her arms around him and he held her tight, his face buried in her hair. They stood like that for a long time, the ocean crashing around them, and something in Lily's chest finally settled into place. "I'm sorry," she whispered against his chest. "I'm sorry it took me so long to see it." He pulled back to look at her, his eyes searching her face. "See what?" "That it's always been you," she said, her voice breaking. "I got distracted by the excitement and the romance and the idea of someone new, but you're right. You've always been here, you've always seen me, and I love you. I've loved you for so long that I forgot it was love because it just felt like breathing." He cupped her face in his hands and kissed her, and it was like coming home after a long journey. It was not the desperate, passionate kisses she had shared with Marcus. It was deeper than that, steadier, like roots growing deep into the earth. When they finally pulled apart, Quinton was grinning. "So does this mean you're bringing me to the wedding tomorrow?" She laughed through her tears. "Yes, you idiot, I'm bringing you to the wedding." They walked back to their cars hand in hand, and Lily felt lighter than she had in months. But there was still one more thing she had to do. She called Marcus that night and asked him to meet her for breakfast the next morning. He agreed immediately, and she could hear the hope in his voice. She hated that she was about to break his heart, but she owed him honesty. They met at a diner, neutral territory. Marcus looked tired, like he had not slept, and guilt twisted in her stomach. "I can't accept your ring," she said gently after they had ordered. "And I can't be with you." "I'm so sorry, Marcus. You're an incredible man and you deserve someone who can love you wholeheartedly, but that's not me." He was quiet for a long moment, staring at his coffee. "It's Quinton, isn't it?" "Yes, I knew," he said with a sad smile. "I think I always knew. The way you talked about him, the way your face changed when he was around, I just didn't want to admit it." He looked up at her, his dark eyes sincere. "I hope he knows how lucky he is." "Thank you for understanding," she whispered. "I don't understand," he admitted, "but I respect it. And I hope you'll be happy, Lily. You deserve that." They parted as friends, or at least as friendly as two people could be under the circumstances. Lily felt sad for hurting him, but she also felt certain in her decision in a way she had not felt about anything in months. The wedding was beautiful. Claire looked stunning in her lace gown, and her fiancé could not take his eyes off her during the ceremony. Lily stood beside her best friend and watched her promise forever to someone, and she felt grateful to witness such pure joy. At the reception, Quinton was the perfect date. He made her laugh, danced with her during the slow songs, and charmed her parents and all her friends. Watching him interact with the people she loved, she realized that he already belonged in her life in a way Marcus never had. He did not have to try to fit. He just did. During a quiet moment, they snuck away to the terrace overlooking the gardens. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. "I need to tell you something," Quinton said, pulling her close. "I wasn't completely honest with you either." Her heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean?" "My research work," he said carefully. "It's not just some grant-funded project. Last year, I started a marine conservation foundation with some colleagues. It's grown bigger than we ever expected. We have funding from governments and corporations around the world. We're making real change, Lily, and I'm the director." She pulled back to look at him. "Quinn, that's amazing. Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I wanted you to choose me for me," he said simply. "Not because I had some impressive title or was successful. I wanted you to choose the guy who knows you, who loves you, who wants to build a life with you, not the guy who runs a foundation or has money in the bank." She laughed, shaking her head in disbelief. "So you were hiding who you really are too?" "I guess we're both a little messed up," he said with a grin. "But we're messed up together." "Together," she repeated, and the word felt like a promise. They danced under the stars, and Lily felt the pieces of her life finally clicking into place. She had been so focused on choosing between two different futures that she had almost missed the one that had been waiting for her all along. 3 months later, Quinton asked her to take a walk on their beach. It was early morning, the sun just beginning to rise over the water, and the sand was cool under her bare feet. They walked in comfortable silence for a while before he stopped and turned to face her. "You remember the first time we came to this beach?" he asked. "We were 7, she said with a smile. "You tried to teach me how to skip stones, and I kept throwing them straight into the water. I told you that day that I was going to marry you someday," he said, and her breath caught. "Do you remember what you said?" She shook her head, tears already forming in her eyes. "You said okay, as long as we could have a beach wedding," he continued. "And then you went back to throwing stones the wrong way." He dropped to one knee in the sand, pulling a simple, elegant ring from his pocket. It was not as flashy as the one Marcus had offered her, but it was more beautiful because it was real. "Lily Jenkins, I have loved you for 23 years, he said, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. "I've loved you through braces and bad haircuts, through college and careers, through you dating other people and me being too scared to tell you how I felt. I've loved you at your best and your worst, and I will love you every day for the rest of my life if you'll let me. Will you marry me?" "Yes," she said, dropping to her knees in front of him. "Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes." He slipped the ring onto her finger and kissed her as the sun rose behind them, painting the sky in brilliant colors. It was not a fairy tale ending because it was not an ending at all. It was a beginning, the start of a life they would build together, rooted in history and growing toward the future. They were married on that same beach 8 months later, with their families and closest friends gathered around them. Claire was her maid of honor, and Quinton's brother stood as his best man. The ceremony was simple and perfect, filled with laughter and happy tears. During his vows, Quinton promised to always find her when she needed space, to keep her coffee ritual alive even though she hated the taste, and to love her through every season of their lives. During her vows, Lily promised to see him, really see him, every single day. To never take for granted the gift of being known and loved by someone who had chosen her over and over again. As they exchanged rings, she thought about Marcus briefly and hoped he had found someone who could love him the way he deserved. She thought about the choice she had almost made, the life she had almost chosen. But mostly she thought about the man standing in front of her, the one who had been there all along, waiting patiently for her to realize that the greatest love stories are not always the most dramatic ones. Sometimes they're the ones that unfold slowly, quietly, deeply, between two people who grow together like trees with intertwined roots. 2 years later, they welcomed their daughter into the world. They named her Marina, after the sea that had always been part of their story. Quinton held her in his arms and cried, and Lily watched the two people she loved most in the world with a heart so full it felt like it might burst. They bought a house on the coast, close to the beach where they had grown up and fallen in love. Quinton continued his conservation work, traveling occasionally but always coming home to them. Lily's marketing career flourished, and she found joy in the balance between her professional life and her family. On their daughter's first birthday, they had a party on the beach. As Lily watched Marina toddle through the sand while Quinton chased after her, she thought about that moment at Claire's wedding when she had felt her life clicking into place. She had chosen the right path, not because it was easy or glamorous or dramatic, but because it was true. That evening, after Marina was asleep and the guests had gone home, Lily and Quinton sat on their porch watching the sunset. He pulled her close, and she rested her head on his shoulder. "Do you ever wonder what your life would have been like if you had chosen differently?" he asked quietly. She thought about it for a moment. "Sometimes," she admitted, "but not because I have regrets, just curiosity, like wondering about a book you decided not to read." And I'm glad I chose this book," she said, looking up at him. "This story, our story. Because it's the one where I get to wake up every morning next to my best friend. Where I get to raise a family with someone who knows me inside and out. Where I get to love and be loved in the steadiest, truest way possible." He kissed the top of her head. "I'm glad you chose me too." Even though you made me wait 23 years for our first real kiss, she laughed. It was worth the wait though, right? Every single second, he said, and she knew he meant it. Years later, when Marina was old enough to understand, Lily would tell her daughter about the time she almost chose the wrong path. About how she had been dazzled by excitement and romance and the idea of something new. About how she had almost missed the greatest love of her life because it had been there all along, so familiar that she had stopped seeing it as special. But that night, sitting on the porch with the man she loved and their daughter sleeping peacefully inside, Lily simply felt grateful. Grateful that she had found her way home. Grateful that Quinton had been patient enough to wait for her. Grateful that love was not always about grand gestures and sweeping declarations, but about showing up every day and choosing each other over and over again. The ocean whispered its eternal song in the darkness, the same song it had been singing since they were children building sandcastles and dreaming about the future. And Lily closed her eyes and listened, content in the knowledge that she had found her forever in the boy next door who had loved her all along. The Billionaire Foundation director who had disguised himself as something simpler just to win her heart as himself. She had chosen the man who had always been the one, even when she had not realized it. And in choosing him, she had chosen a life filled with the kind of love that grows deeper with every passing year, rooted in friendship and trust and the beautiful certainty of being truly known.